Hey guys, tonight we're slipping behind the velvet curtain, into the steam, the shadows, and the softly perfumed secrets of the Ottoman Empire's most peculiar palace job, the laundry keeper. Picture this. You're tiptoeing barefoot down a mosaic-tiled hallway in Topkapi Palace. The air so thick with humidity it curls your eyelashes. Lanterns flicker in alcoves, casting amber ripples over silk drapes and polished copper bowls. Somewhere behind a lattice screen, a eunuch whispers to a chambermaid. The scent of rosewater trails past you. And you're carrying an armful of very expensive underthings, soaked in imperial sweat. Welcome to your new job, laundering the lives of sultans, concubines, viziers, and the occasional double agent. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments where you're listening from, and what time it is where you are. I love seeing just how far this sleepy little history train travels. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge past the courtyard of the Black Eunuchs, holding your breath, not because of fear, though they are terrifying in their silence, but because a bundle of laundry under your arm contains garments recently worn by the Sultan himself. They reek of musk, cloves, and something else, maybe tension. You dare not wrinkle them. You dare not peek. And heaven help you if you mix them with a concubine's shift. Palace laundry isn't a humble task. It's a high-stakes performance, equal parts ritual, hygiene, and hush-hush diplomacy. At least 30 people work in the imperial laundry, or samalk, each trained in an exact choreography of soaking, scrubbing, and steaming. Some wash, some iron, some fold, and a few trusted souls. They watch. Yes, the watchers. Not for quality control, though a wrinkle in the wrong kaftan is punishable, but to ensure nothing goes missing. Or appears. Fabric has been known to smuggle poison, secrets, or even forged edicts sewn in hems. You start with linens. Bed sheets large enough to stretch across a marble courtyard. They arrive bundled in fine muslin sacks, tagged with calligraphed notes in elegant Ottoman script. The colors tell you who they belong to. Saffron for the harem, indigo for the sultan, russet for military men, and teal for the kitchen staff. Heaven forbid you confuse teal with indigo. Last week, someone did, and no one has seen him since. The process begins at dawn. First, sorting. The women of the harem send their laundry through an intermediary, usually a mute girl trained to never speak what she sees. She hands you bundles perfumed with ambergris, frankincense, and occasionally, desperation. Some are blood-stained. Some are stained with things you don't want to think about. The men's laundry is easier, in theory. Less lace, more sweat. But it carries its own hazards. A janissary's breeches may conceal lice or notes from secret lovers. Once, someone found a gold coin sewn into the waistband. The story goes that the washer who discovered it tried to report it and ended up washing the palace latrines. With his hands. You learn quickly that this job isn't about cleanliness. It's about control. Each item wash passes through at least 5 sets of hands. One person inspects. One soaks. One washes. One rinses. And one dries, all under watchful eyes. Historians still argue whether this extreme system was meant to preserve hygiene or secrecy. Some say it was ritual, others believe it was fear. Fear of curses sewn into nightshirts or sorcery soaked into turbans. After all, the palace housed over 1,000 people, many of them scheming for power, position, or at the very least, a better place in the bath queue. And the baths, hammams, oh, they're another beast entirely. You'll get there. But first, your knuckles are raw from scrubbing a velvet sash that once belonged to the Grand Vizier. It smells faintly of rose and betrayal. You look up. The head launderer, an elderly man with sun-leathered skin and eyes like wet onyx, nods at you. You pass today's test. Your linens are white. Your hands are red. Your tongue is silent. Good. You hang the sash on a line strung between 2 marble pillars. The light hits it just so, and for a moment, you see the outline of a handprint that wasn't yours. You blink. It's gone. But the lesson remains. In this palace, even clean things can be stained. At lunch, you eat a fig and a crust of bread near the copper boiler. One of the folding women murmurs that a concubine fainted last night, her undergarments soaked in sweat and panic. You don't ask why. You don't want to know. Because in Topkapi Palace, laundry isn't just fabric, it's testimony. And you're the keeper of 1,000 truths, all scrubbed until they shine. You rise before dawn the next day, feet still sore from yesterday's soaking and wringing. But there's no such thing as rest when you're part of the Ottoman Palace laundry car. The sky hasn't even cracked with color yet, and already the stone floors are slick with condensation. You wrap your linen sash tighter and descend into the bowels of the laundry chamber, a half-underground sanctum of steam and silence. Today, you're assigned to the Kanar odors, the boiling room. This isn't your average pot of hot water. It's a chamber of fire and fury, filled with enormous copper cauldrons, each capable of swallowing entire carpets whole. The heat hits your face like an open palm. Somewhere behind you, a massive wooden paddle stays the cloth as it bubbles. The cauldron keeper, a squat man with singed eyebrows and fingers like scorched dates, grunts at you to pass him the indigo tag bundle. Sultan's underrobes. You don't tremble, not outwardly, but your brain is quietly composing your last will and testament, just in case you singe the wrong hem. The fabrics are delicate, even if the contents aren't. Silks with gold embroidery. Soft muslins meant to whisper against royal skin. All destined to be submerged in water perfumed with crushed bay leaves, ground cloves, and a dollop of white vinegar to cut the oils. It's a recipe older than some dynasties. You stir carefully. The wooden pole is taller than you, heavy as sin. With each rotation, steam rises in fragrant plumes, curling like genies in the dim lamplight. A splash hits your wrist. You wince, but you don't yelp. That's a rookie mistake, and you're being watched. Always watched. A eunuch from the inner court stands at the arched entrance, arms folded, eyes half-lidded. He's pretending to be bored, but you know better. His job isn't to scold you. It's to witness. If something goes missing, say, a golden button or tassel with a cipher, he'll be the first to accuse. Not that it matters who's actually guilty. Laundry punishment is collective. One thief means 3 demotions and 2 disappearances. The penalty for a lost royal garment? They say once, a slipper vanished from the Valide Sultan's private quarters. The woman handling it was found days later, scrubbing the palace floor with her hair. You're careful. The heat makes time slippery. Minutes slide into hours. The copper turns everything a dreamy orange hue. Occasionally, the paddle catches on something heavy, a sash soaked too long, maybe a jeweled cuff. You rescue it gently, using wooden tongs shaped like crab pincers. You imagine the cuff belonged to the Grand Admiral. Smells faintly of brine and arrogance. The head of the boiling room, Fatma Ham, is a mountain of a woman with one good eye and a voice like gravel. She inspects each pot personally. When she nods at your bundle, it means 2 things. Your work was good, and you may live to boil another day. She hands you a slotted basket with silver-tipped gloves. Time to rinse the delicate things, she mutters. You carry it to the rinsing basin, fed by a thin stream of cold water running from a marble lion's mouth. You rinse each piece 3 times, once for sweat, once for scent, once for sin. Some of the older women whisper that the 3rd rinse is spiritual. That water has memory. That each robe carries echoes of its wearer's secrets. If that's true, then this basin is a choir of ghosts. You glance to your left. Someone's rinsing a chemise dyed pale peach, marked with a russet tag of the harem. The girl handling it is barely older than you, but her eyes are already dull. Too much soap. Too much knowing. It's said that some concubines secretly passed love letters sewn into hems, messages smuggled out, soaked away, or discovered too late. One of the folders even found a needle tip embedded in a seam. Historians still argue whether it was meant for assassination or escape. You lean forward and whisper a joke under your breath. Something about how even laundry in this place feels like espionage. She doesn't laugh, but the corner of her mouth quirks just slightly. A palace miracle. After rinsing comes wringing. You twist each piece around a wooden rod, pressing out the water in tight, practiced movements. It takes strength, but not brute force. Too much pressure and the silk will tear. Too little and it'll mildew in the folding room. There's a rhythm to it, and you find yourself humming a lullaby your mother used to sing. She never imagined her child would be ringing out the royal boxes of a world-conquering dynasty. By midday, your hair is soaked, your fingers wrinkled, and your breath smells faintly of cloves and fatigue. But you're proud. Today's linens gleam. One of the older ringers even pats your shoulder. It's the first human touch you've received in days that didn't come with a side of scrutiny. You carry your final basket to the sun-drying terrace. The sky opens just enough for golden rays to bathe the hanging robes, illuminating the embroidered tulips and swirling calligraphy. For a moment, the palace doesn't feel so heavy. It's just wind, cloth, and light. Until you notice the falconer watching from above, perched beside his bird. You nod. He doesn't nod back. Welcome to Palace Laundry, friend, where even the shadows have schedules, and the sunshine is never unobserved. By now, your muscles ache in places you didn't know existed, and your fingertips feel permanently pruned. But rest is a myth here, like a sweet fable told to children who'll never grow up to serve in the Ottoman palace laundry. The next shift begins before you even finish rubbing the ache from your calves. This time, you're summoned to a different corner of the laundry complex, the folding chamber. It sounds gentle, doesn't it? Folding, like origami with cotton. But in reality, it's a high-stakes ballet of creases and consequences. You shuffle in with your basket of just-dried linens, still warm from the sun-drenched terrace. The folding room is long and narrow, walled in stone, with low tables lacquered to such a shine you can see the distorted reflection of your own exhaustion. The head folder, a wiry woman named Halide who hasn't smiled since Murad IV was on the throne, gestures you forward. She hands you a practice sheet. Not fabric, paper. Show me how you fold the ceremonial towel, she says, expressionless. You hesitate for only a moment. Then begin, one edge tucked precisely over, then quartered inward like a trifold letter, the final flourish forming the imperial tulip, a fold so iconic it was once sketched into the margins of a Grand Vizier's personal diary. No one's allowed to mess it up. She watches in silence. The moment you finish, she whisks the paper away and stares at the invisible crease lines, her brow furrowed like a disappointed calligrapher. Acceptable, she says at last. You've just passed the towel test. Barely. Folding in the palace is not just about neatness. It's about hierarchy. You're given a folding map, an actual ink diagram, showing which garments receive which style. The scroll fold 4 outer kaftans, the fan fold 4 indoor robes, and the dreaded prayer fold, which must align exactly with Mecca. If you mess that one up, well, let's just say you won't need to fold again anytime soon. Or ever. As you begin the actual wake, you realize something peculiar. The act of folding slows the world. It's meditative. You fall into a rhythm. Cloth speaks to you. Silk murmurs. Wool hums. Linen complains. Each piece is its own temperament. You fold a pair of the Sultan's lounging pants. Breezy, wide-legged, dyed saffron and patterned with pomegranates. A whisper of rose water clings to the fabric. It smells like opulence and laziness. Next, a crisp ceremonial robe, gold-threaded with the chura, the imperial monogram, woven just beneath the collar. You fold with reverence. Rumor has it this one's reserved for treaty signings and executions. Same outfit, different tone. A pile of napkins follows. You'd think they'd be easy. You'd be wrong. Napkins are folded into tiny peaked pyramids that must sit upright for the evening meal. If they droop, it's a sign of bad luck. Always, a sign that the folding room is failing. One infamous droop in 1649 allegedly coincided with a terrible diplomatic blunder. Historians still argue whether the two events were connected, but no one's risked a lazy crease since. Across the room, a novice folder gasps. Her crease just cracked the embroidery thread on a vizier's dinner robe. The silence that follows is so thick you can hear a drop of lavender oil hit the floor. Halide walks over slowly, picks up the ruined garment, and with a motion smoother than silk, sets it ablaze in the hearth without saying a word. Lesson learned. Your hands keep moving. There's no room for nerves here. Every fold is a prayer, every press a promise. At some point, a servant boy enters, panting, holding a red ribbon package. For the chief eunuch, he says, setting it carefully on the table. Red ribbon. That means personal linen. Undergarments. Items worn close to the skin. You swallow. This is the job no one wants but must be done flawlessly. You undo the ribbon. The pieces are soft, immaculately embroidered, and shockingly lightweight. You fold them using the privacy method, a series of overlapping flaps designed to conceal contents entirely, even if the bundle is opened. Yes, Ottoman laundry had privacy settings long before the iPhone. Halide watches this process like a hawk spotting its prey. When you finish, she says nothing, just takes the package and seals it with wax. Lunchtime comes and goes, marked only by the sound of someone chewing dried figs behind a pillar. You don't stop. Not really. You nibble, fold, sip from a cracked clay cup, fold. It's the closest thing to multitasking in a world that values singular precision. And then, just as you begin to believe you might make it to sunset without incident, a runner arrives with news. There's been a spill in the Silamok bathhouse, he says. Emergency pressing required. You've chosen to accompany the rescue team. They hand you an iron, an actual iron slab of metal with a handle, heated in coals and wrapped in a fig leaf to prevent scorching. You grip it carefully and follow the team down the slippery corridor toward the bathhouse, where steam and shouting await. Apparently, someone knocked over a basin. Towels soaked, robes drenched, and Weiss, a foreign ambassador, is waiting to be dressed in ceremonial linen for a tour of the gardens. Your job? Make those damp, wrinkled robes look like they just emerged from the heavens. You press on a low stone bench, hands steady, breath shallow. One robe smokes a little too long beneath the iron. You flip it with a hiss and pray it didn't scorch. It didn't. Barely. The robes are wrapped, tagged, and swept away. Crisis averted. Back in the folding chamber, Halide gives you a tiny nod as you re-enter. Barely perceptible, but it sends a shiver of pride down your spine. Maybe you're starting to earn your place here. One crease at a time. You wake the next morning to the sound of wooden clogs on marble. Click-clack, click-clack, and realize two things. First, someone spilled rosewater all over the sleeping mat again. And second, you've been summoned to a new task. Not just any task. Today, you'll be entering the linen vault. Most workers go years before they are allowed near it. The vault is the crown jewel of the laundry operation, the heart of the textile empire that pumps cleanliness into the entire Ottoman palace. You, still green but determined, are being fast-tracked. Possibly because of that incident yesterday, the bathhouse emergency. Possibly because Halide finally blinked in your direction. Either way, you're going in. The entrance is tucked beneath a discreet archway behind the ironing courtyard. Two guards nod as you approach, their spears resting against the cool stone. Inside, the air is colder than it should be, preserved by thick walls and tiny ventilation shafts no wider than a breadstick. And there it is. Shelf after shelf, stacked to the vaulted ceiling, each one holding perfectly bundled stacks of textiles. Towels, robes, sashes, nightgowns, veils, turbans, handkerchiefs, slipper socks. Yes, slipper socks, specially padded for the Sultan's cold tile floors. The vault glows with reflected light from tiny brass lanterns, flickering off silk threads and gold embroidery. Each bundle is tagged with a handwritten slip. The labels are written in 3 scripts: Arabic for official designation, Persian for poetic description, and Ottoman Turkish for practical sorting. For example, white linen robe with silver thread, worn during night prayers on Thursdays. Or ceremonial waistband, peacock motif, third favorite of Valide Sultan. You are given a ladder, a logbook, and a stern companion named Yusuf. His beard is short and his patience shorter. He hands you your first assignment. Retrieve 10 veils for the Circassian concubine's morning walk. Simple, you think. Except not all veils are alike. You soon learn that the veil hierarchy is absurdly specific. There are breeze veils for summer strolls, whisper veils for private conversations, shadow veils worn when mourning someone not quite dead but no longer fashionable, and a particularly controversial one called the almost veil, which is sheer enough to scandalize a candle. Historians still argue whether the almost veil was ever officially permitted in the palace grounds, or if it was an invention of ambitious tailors and poetic scribes trying to seduce pay bonuses out of board officials. Either way, you don't touch those. Too risky. You scale the ladder, retrieve the proper veils, soft cotton, dyed the color of lilacs dipped in milk, and descend with the careful grace of someone who knows one wrong move could send lace and imperial favor tumbling to the floor. Next task, sort the new arrivals. Every week, dozens of fresh garments pour into the linen vault, some newly made, others returned from temporary reassignment, banquets, hunts, ambassadorial visits, occasional arrests. Each must be examined, inventoried, and stored in the correct humidity zone. That's right. The vault is divided into microclimates. The northeast wall holds damp-tolerant fabrics. The western shelves get the driest breeze and house anything with embroidery. Yusuf quizzes you on this as you work. Where do you place a silk sash worn in the bathhouse, still faintly damp but no longer steaming? You answer, middle south wall, third shelf. He nods, doesn't smile, but he doesn't sigh either. Progress. You're starting to see how laundry here isn't about cleaning. It's about control, information, power. Later that day, you're handed a curious object, a tiny scroll with a silk cord and a stamped seal in red wax. It's a garment request slip, but not from the palace court. This one comes from the harem librarian. Yes, the harem has a librarian. No, she doesn't read books in her undergarments. She's requesting something highly specific. The green reading robe last worn during the poet's visit, sandalwood scented, with cinnamon trim. You raise an eyebrow. Yusuf raises both. That one's in the restricted shelf, he mutters. Turns out there's a fourth corner of the vault. Not on any official map. It holds garments too controversial, personal, or politically sensitive to be accessed without special clearance. Like the reading robe, you accompany Yusuf to the shadowy corridor and watch as he unlocks a small iron gate with a key worn smooth with time. Inside are the palace's whispered stories. The Sultan's weeping robe, worn after a failed treaty. The assassin's slippers, recovered from a failed plot, now cleaned and folded like any other. A child's wedding cloak, never used. These aren't just clothes. They're ghosts. Yusuf doesn't let you touch them, but you help document them, brush their folds with cedar oil, and seal them again in muslin wrappers. There's an ache in your chest as you leave. Maybe from the stories. Maybe from bending wrong while lifting the box labeled items unknown. Do not inquire. Back in the main vault, the work continues. A surprise audit is announced. You scramble to match every tag, every label, every recorded garment to the master inventory. You and Yusuf spend 6 straight hours flipping through parchment scrolls, deciphering faded ink, and trying to guess whether rose-tinged underlayer for second wife's gala ensemble refers to the actual second wife or just the ranking favorite. By nightfall, the vault is silent again. You stand at the entrance, hands stained with ink, eyes glazed, mind fogged by the sheer volume of fabric you've touched, smelled, and folded. You're beginning to understand. This palace doesn't run on politics or poetry. It runs on laundry. You've barely caught your breath from inventory duty when your name is inked onto the morning roster beside 3 dreaded words: scented water preparation. This is no ordinary water, and certainly no ordinary task. The Ottoman palace is soaked in fragrance, steeped in it, steeped like tea in roses, jasmine, orange blossom, and the occasional whiff of ambergris if the budget allows. Everything from bath linens to pillowcases must carry this subtle touch of scent. Too much, and it's vulgar. Too little, and you risk a stern letter from the Valide Sultan's chief nose. Yes, that's a job. The royal smell tester, Okoku Kathudas, oversees olfactory harmony in the palace. Historians still argue whether this official ever had the power to veto court events based on odor alone, or if that's just a myth spread by bored eunuchs. But you don't question it. If you botch this, someone's going to smell it. You report to the palace still room just before sunrise. The air is heavy with vapor. Huge copper cauldrons bubble gently, each steeping a different potion. Rose petals in one, dried mint in another, and in the far corner, a sinister vat of something dark and sticky labeled only as fall winter linens. You decide not to ask. Your guide for the day is an ancient woman named Fatma. She's the scent matriarch, rumored to be over 90, though no one's brave enough to confirm. Her fingers are knotted like roots, and her voice smells like lavender before you even hear it. She instructs you on ratios. 4 hand towels used by poets, lemon, orange blossom, and a breath of marjoram. 4 undergarments of the young concubines, rose, only rose. 4 sultan's foot wraps, vinegar and fig leaf. Do not get them confused. You repeat the combinations aloud like spells. Fatma nods once. The process itself is delicate. The scented water is not simply splashed. It's brushed, using long-handled fans dipped in the cooled mixture and swept gently across the linens while they rest on warm stones. The goal is saturation without soaking, scent without smothering. A single drop too much and the fabric turns sour. You learn that the hard way when your first batch of bath towels comes out reeking of moldy chamomile. You don't cry. You just do it again. Meanwhile, the palace is waking. Servants bustle. Pages run. Somewhere nearby, a muezzin sings softly from a rooftop. A cat slinks through the still room, brushing your ankle with the air of one who owns the place. Fatma shoos it away with a dried basil stalk. He thinks the lavender water is his personal spring, she mutters. As you wake, you begin to notice the politics of scent. The robe of a high-ranking courtier gets jasmine and bergamot, light, masculine, fresh. The slippers of a disgraced official, oregano and sour myrtle, sharp, a little bitter. A rumor floats in. One of the Sultan's favorites has requested pomegranate water for her shawls. Bold, possibly subversive. Pomegranate is linked with fertility, ambition, and scandal in some palace circles. You don't comment. By midday, you're helping fill the scent jars. These are ornate glass vessels shaped like teardrops, each one designed to mist a single article of clothing when uncorked. One jar is filled with saffron water, reserved for prayer beads. Another, clove and cinnamon, used during the cold months on woolen cloaks to ward off both fleas and melancholy. You prepare them carefully, sealing the stoppers with wax stamped by Fatma's signet, a tiny tulip. Later, a messenger from the imperial kitchens appears holding a silken pouch and a stiff expression. Her Majesty the Valide Sultan requests the melon water. You blink. Melon, Fatma sighs. It's her new fancy. Don't ask questions. She claims it reminds her of her childhood in Aden. So you retrieve the honeydew distillate. It's subtle, refreshing, and completely at odds with the deep musk used just 2 weeks ago. Tastes shift in the palace like the wind over the Bosphorus. There's a strange hierarchy to the scented materials. Rose and sandalwood, expensive but common. Lavender, associated with purity, used for younger members of the harem. Musk and ambergris, rare, animalic, and only applied to ceremonial robes or inner sashes. Then there are the hidden scents. Some fabrics are perfumed not for the wearer, but for the people around them. A concubine's sleeve might be laced with sage to calm a nervous prince. The chief black eunuch's cloak may carry thyme, believed to ward off envy. These aren't indulgences. They are tactics. Historians still debate whether scent rituals in the palace were a form of psychological warfare or just highly codified hygiene. Either way, Fatma treats them with the gravity of statecraft. She shares one final story as the light dims. During the reign of Sultan Ahmed III, it said a new laundress was dismissed after applying clove to the garments of a visiting ambassador. The scent, apparently, had a funereal connotation in his homeland. A diplomatic disaster. Ever since, the scent matriarch's approval has been law. You exhale and wrap your fingers around a bundle of freshly treated linens. They are soft, cool, smell like gardens you've never visited. You line them up in baskets of polished wood, each marked with an ivory tag. Fatma watches. Then, for the first time all day, she smiles. You didn't ruin anything, she says. High praise. You leave the still room with hands pruned from steam, nostrils drunk on 100 flowers, and a newfound respect for the invisible world woven into every thread of palace life. You smell like a bouquet. You feel like a wilted daisy. But still, you did it. And tomorrow, rumor has it, you'll be ironing. You wake up with flower-scented fingers and the vague memory of a dream involving lavender and judgmental cats. But there's no time to decode dreams. Today, you iron. Yes, the next rung in your bizarre little climb through Ottoman laundry hierarchy involves heat, pressure, and the constant threat of irreversible fabric ruin. You report to the ironing chamber, a long, low-ceilinged hall with fluted stone arches and faint scorch marks on the floor. The walls smell like roasted linen and old steam. And then there they are, the charcoal box irons. Not delicate tools. These are squat, iron-jawed monsters with wooden handles and hinged lids, meant to be filled with glowing coals. Each weighs more than a small child. Each is capable of burning through silk like a knife through sugar. And today, you'll be handling one with your name chalked faintly on the handle, your very own badge of risk. You're guided by Master Yusuf, the palace's chief ironer. Is a man of few words and many burns. His left eyebrow never quite grew back after the velvet incident. His job? To teach you to smooth royal garments without turning them to ash. Heat, not fire, he says, tapping the iron like it's a sleeping cat. Let it breathe. Let it settle. You begin by learning the coals, how to cradle them in ash so they stay hot without flaring, how to listen for the faint hiss when the iron meets damp cloth. If it screams, you're too late. The first task is cotton undershirts. Humble, simple, but deceptively treacherous. They are easily scorched if you press too long, easily wrinkled if you press too light. A fine line, like so much else here. The table is covered in thick felt, and over it you stretch the garment, tugging just enough, smoothing each seam with damp fingers before pressing the iron across. 1 sweep. 2. Lift, never slide. Every motion is watched. Master Yusuf nods once, grunts twice, and finally utters, "Possible." Historians still argue whether palace ironing techniques were adapted from Persian practices or invented independently. The Ottomans prized smoothness in everything, from silk robes to court etiquette, and wrinkles, literal or symbolic, were frowned upon. In court poetry, a creased sash was once likened to a fractured promise. After cotton comes silk, delicate, temperamental, rich as the sultan's dreams. For this, you switch to a glass iron, a polished block of thick glass, warmed over a brazier, used without direct contact. You place a protective muslin cloth between the silk and the glass, then begin your slow, steady passes. This isn't about pressure, it's about poise. The garment glows under your touch. Gold thread catches the light. You wonder who will wear it. A vizier? A concubine? Someone whose name echoes down marble corridors. Probably someone who won't think twice about what it took to make the sleeve lie flat. That's part of the laundry keeper's invisible curse. You see the work, not the wearer. Still, you take pride in it. A messenger delivers a rush job. The Grand Vizier's court robe for an emergency council session. It's velvet, embroidered with cloud motifs in silver thread, and it smells faintly of musk and cedar. This requires a third tool, the pressing board, a heavy stone slab preheated with hot tiles and covered in wool felt. You lay the robe out like a sacred scroll and press with steady, even palms, coaxing each ripple into submission. The silver clouds shine. The seams behave. You sweat like a stoker in July. There's no applause, no medals, but the robe is carried off in silence, which in this job is a kind of him. Later, you tackle the accessories, sashes, veils, and those ridiculous but beautiful feathered turbans. Each requires a different technique. A sash might be rolled, a veil waved gently over steam. One item, a crimson handkerchief, is treated with actual rosewater mist before being tucked into a carved cedar box. And here's the fringe tidbit. Palace ironing included the occasional duty of perfume branding, pressing lightly scented symbols into the fabric using embossed, warm brass plates. You're shown one, a tulip inside a crescent, used only for the sultan's handkerchiefs. It leaves no ink, only the ghost of a scent and a raised whisper of a shape. You wonder, is this ironing, or is this calligraphy with steam? The chamber's mood shifts in the afternoon. Light filters through the grilled windows, catching the wisps of steam that rise like spirits. The apprentices hum old songs. One of them tells the story of a laundress who ironed her way into the Sultan's harem by mistake. She'd pressed the wrong robe, been mistaken for its owner, and wooed the man with her ability to flatten conversation. You snort. Definitely a myth. Probably. And yet, you're ironing not just clothing, but reputation. A single crease might insult a visiting diplomat. A wrinkle in a prayer robe might be interpreted as neglect. The palace breathes through its linens. At dusk, you cool your iron, drain the ash, and wipe the handle with lemon water to ward off splinters. Your hands ache. Your back creaks. But you've smoothed hundreds of surfaces, and no one caught fire. A small win. Yusuf claps your shoulder with a calloused hand. Tomorrow, we starch. You nod, but inside, you laugh. Of course, because apparently, in this life of whispered politics and steaming cloth, there's always another layer. It's barely dawn when you're summoned to the starching room, one of the most mysterious chambers in the palace laundry hierarchy. If ironing was about grace under pressure, starching is about balance between alchemy and ambition. Because here's the truth. No matter how soft the cotton or fine the linen, without starch, the garments simply don't behave. You enter the room and are greeted by a smell both familiar and strange. Flour, vinegar, faint whiffs of lavender, and something not unlike boiled rice. Huge ceramic bowls line the counters, each filled with thick white paste in varying consistencies. This is the heart of the operation. Handmade starch, brewed from rice water, wheat flour, or even mashed potatoes, depending on the garment and its destiny. At the center of the room stands your next mentor, Auntie Hava. Nobody knows if she's truly related to anyone in the palace, but she's called Auntie by everyone, from scullions to scribes. She has eyes like oversteeped tea and hands permanently dusted in powder. When she speaks, her voice is equal parts lullaby and threat. Today, we stiffen dignity, she says, handing you a wooden paddle. No sagging in the presence of power. You begin with basics, collars and cuffs. These small but critical pieces must hold their shape all day without cracking or drooping. The starch mixture for these is thick and cooked, applied with a brush, then spread evenly with a paddle. You work it into the linen like you're icing a cake with very high stakes. Too thick, and it'll flake. Too thin, and it's limp. The secret, Auntie Hava tells you, is to listen for the fabric sigh. You try. You mostly hear your own nerves. Starching is a time game. After application, the items are pinned on drying frames, wooden lattices strung with cord, and left to stiffen under sunlight or near the warm wall tiles. You watch as veils, cuffs, and even an entire ceremonial caftan are stretched like architectural blueprints, waiting to dry into perfect, immovable elegance. And here comes your quirky historical tidbit. In elite Ottoman circles, starch was once scented with herbs and even powdered musk, not only to impress, but to subtly denote status. Poorer starch smiths might use plain rice water. But hey, in the palace, no fabric leaves unscented. For larger garments, robes, sashes, sometimes even bed sheets, a lighter starch solution is used, soaked in a tub and wrung by hand using twist poles. You and another apprentice grip either end of the pole, twisting the fabric like a great towel until excess liquid drips back into the vat. Your arms ache, your palms burn, but the result? A linen that crackles as it folds, a robe that rustles like an idea just before it's spoken. Historians still argue whether the Ottomans developed their starching techniques independently or borrowed them through trade with Venice and Persia. What's not disputed? The results were unmatched in the Islamic world. Ottoman ceremonial dress was praised not just for richness of fabric, but its geometric crispness, like origami with a soul. Later, Auntie Hava shows you the starch book, a thick ledger with fabric types, starch recipes, and annotations in Ottoman Turkish, Arabic, and even a little Greek. She points to one entry labeled only with a sultan's monogram. Special formula, she whispers. We never let the recipe leave this room. You assigned your first solo project, a boy's ceremonial tunic, lined with satin and edged with stiff lace. The kind worn by princes during circumcision feasts or high holidays. You prepare the starch bath, soak the lace, blot the satin, and mount everything on a frame shaped like a child's body. When you're done, it looks like a ghost of future power, tiny, upright, full of potential. Then comes folding. Yes, starching is not just about rigidity, it's about shape retention. You must learn the triple accordion fold, the gentle curve fold, and the dreaded rose twist, used only for the veil of the Queen Mother during major festivals. Auntie Hava demonstrates once, and you blink. It's a fabric illusion, petal after petal, all perfectly suspended in layers of starch and air. The final stage is finishing. Dried garments are brushed down with stiff horsehair brushes, trimmed of crusted starch flakes, then misted lightly with rose or orange blossom water. One apprentice sneezes and ruins a collar. Auntie Hava makes him redo it from scratch. Mid-afternoon, you're assigned to prep a gift bundle for an envoy from the Safavid court. It includes a robe, gloves, socks, and even undergarments, all starched and folded into a cedar-lined trunk with sachets of clove and mint. You tuck a tiny glass bottle of starch powder into the corner, labeled Palace Formula No. 3. It's a gesture of diplomacy and bragging rights. By dusk, you're bent over a lace headpiece that needs urgent attention before a banquet. The lace is older than your apprenticeship. It was rumored to have adorned a sultan's favorite concubine during her garden wedding, a ceremony held in secret, under moonlight, near the tulip pavilion. You smooth it, starch it, whisper apologies to its threads. It dries in minutes, holds shape like spun ice. You feel something strange, satisfaction, not from power or praise, but from precision. You've taken something shapeless and made it speak, without words, without movement, just quiet grace. Auntie Hava clasps your wrist. You're one of us now, she says. Soft hands, sharp eyes, and starch in your blood. You smile, you flex your fingers, and tomorrow, you'll learn about folded scent pouches, hidden inside the sleeves of the most sacred garments. But for now, you sleep with the scent of clove on your collar. You wake to the soft chime of the third morning bell, your back sore, your fingertips still faintly powdered from yesterday's starch. The scent of cloves lingers on your sleeves, a badge of your quiet triumph in the starching room. But today, you're heading deeper into the mysteries of Ottoman textile rituals, where scent, symbolism, and social standing are folded into cloth with the same care as royal decrees. Today's lesson: scent pouches, tiny, nearly invisible bundles of herbs and oils sewn directly into garments. It's subtle work, and it requires a light touch, sharp eyes, and, according to your new instructor, a nose that knows the difference between jasmine and jasmine that's been stepped on by a camel. The master of this particular craft is a small, wiry man named Sadiq Bey, who smells like lavender and beeswax and walks like he's balancing a teacup on his head. He doesn't speak often. When he does, it's to correct posture, scold a heavy hand, or insist that a true scent pouch never overpowers, it whispers. You begin with the basics of aroma layering. First, dried herbs, rose petals, myrtle, mint, lavender. Then powdered resins, frankincense, myrrh, benzoin. Finally, a few drops of oil, sandalwood for serenity, orange blossom for clarity, musk for authority. These ingredients are mixed in precise ratios and wrapped in the thinnest gauze, then stitched into secret seams of caftans, sashes, and even turban linings. Why? In part, to mask body odor in a time when daily bathing was a luxury, but also to signal rank, mood, or purpose. Lavender might soothe a grieving mother. Sandalwood might prepare a sultan for war. Mint could wake a sleepy vizier before court. The clothes didn't just carry scent, they carried intent. Your first assignment is to prepare a pouch for a vizier's prayer robe, worn during sunrise supplications. You select calming herbs, blend them carefully, and tuck the pouch into the seam below the collar. The scent must rise gently with body heat, never obvious, always present. You breathe in. It's peace in a threadbare whisper. Quirky historical fact. In elite circles, some nobles swapped scent recipes like they were state secrets. One concubine was known to have faked illness just to gain access to the queen mother's sleeping robe, hoping to copy the scent blend sewn into its hem. She was discovered when a eunuch sneezed dramatically and gave her away. Sadiq Bey instructs you in embroidered disguises, ways to hide the pouch under floral stitching or tiny decorative knots. You work for hours on one for a young prince's tunic, golden tulip petals stitched around a core of clove and cinnamon. When finished, it looks like nothing more than a small flourish. But lean close, and you catch a hint of warmth, comforting, spicy, noble. Historians still argue whether these pouches were meant more for personal hygiene, psychological conditioning, or political theater. Some say they were like olfactory armor, intended to calm nerves and project power. Others believe the scent was spiritual, a way to cloak the body in divine associations. Either way, no important garment left the palace without one. You assist with a larger project, a wedding dowry chest being assembled for a highborn bride. Inside are silks, linens, veils, handkerchiefs, all laced with differing scents, each telling part of a story. There's bergamot for brightness, cinnamon for warmth, patchouli for grounding. Every pouch is hand-stitched. No two are the same. There's also an etiquette to scent gifting. Overstep with musk and it's interpreted as aggressive. Underuse rose and you risk appearing cold. One seamstress was once demoted for including a blend meant for funerals in a set of spring festival garments. She blamed poor labeling. Sadiq Bey just raised an eyebrow and whispered, "Clove and grief are not easily confused." Your hands cramp from the tiny stitching. You prick your finger once, twice, earning the right to wear a thimble shaped like a turtle. Slow and steady, Sadiq Bey says. You begin to understand. This work is quiet influence. The robe may gleam with gold thread, but it's the hidden scent that leaves a lasting impression. Later, you're sent to assist with a garment restoration, a sacred robe worn by a long-dead sultan during a pilgrimage to Mecca. The fabric is threadbare, but still faintly fragrant with oud and rose. The original scent pouch has long since crumbled to dust, but records remain. You and Sadiq reconstruct it by recipe, careful to avoid oversteeping the gauze, lest it stain the ancient seams. As you sew, a eunuch from the archives passes by, sniffing the air. "That smells like Sultan Murad's summer chamber," he says wistfully. You realize, scent is memory, scent is legacy. By twilight, you help pack garments for an upcoming ceremony. Each folded item is slipped with a final sachet, gently pressed and tied with silk thread. One of the younger apprentices jokes that you're making the palace smell like a spice market. Sadiq Bey merely nods. "Better that," he says, "than what it truly smells like without us." Before you leave, he gives you a tiny square of linen, stitched with your initials and filled with lemon balm and rose. "Keep it near your heart," he says, "or your armpit, whichever needs more help." You chuckle, but you tuck it carefully into your robe. And as you walk back through the marble halls, clothing bundles in hand, scent pouches fluttering in your wake, you wonder how many stories have been written in smell, lost to anyone without the nose for it. Tomorrow, you're scheduled to help with the Hammam Day preparation, when the palace's finest garments are steamed and refreshed, the air thick with lavender fog and soapy chants. But tonight, your dreams will be stitched in jasmine. It's still dark when the first bell of Hammam Day tolls across the palace, its low tone echoing through the vaulted corridors like a yawn made of bronze. You drag yourself from your pallet and blink into the cool morning light, heart already thudding with anticipation and mild dread. Today, you're entering the sacred steamy chaos of the palace bathhouse laundry cycle, where fabric meets fire, water, and soap in one glorious, slippery ordeal. You are assigned to the eastern wing of the imperial hammam, a vast domed space tiled in pale marble, lit by pinpricks of morning sun slipping through glass orbs in the ceiling. The air shimmers with heat and the sound of dripping water mingles with the quiet muttering of laundresses and eunuchs who've been awake since the moon was high. Your guide today is an elderly washer named Ayla Hatun, whose arms are thick as bread loaves and whose voice carries the gravitas of someone who's steamed royal underwear for 3 decades without complaint. Keep your sleeves dry, your tongue quiet, and your soap rations sacred, she instructs, handing you a wooden scoop. The laundry protocol for bathhouse day is part ritual, part wrestling match. Soiled robes, towels, and linens are first soaked in a lemon vinegar solution, a mildly acidic brew said to dissolve body oils and evil thoughts alike. Then they are hand-rubbed with soap root paste, agitated by foot in copper tubs, rinsed in jasmine water, and finally steamed over heated flagstones until soft as cloud bread. And yes, you are expected to memorize every step. You plunge your hands into the first vat. The water is warm, almost too warm, and smells faintly of lavender, sweat, and something like boiled carrots. Ayla Hatun grunts approvingly when you don't flinch. You've got the hands for it, she says. Not like those scribes with fingers like fig twigs. As you work the fabric, you notice small patterns stitched into towel hems, symbols denoting who used them. A tulip for the sultan's sister, a lion for a favored guard captain, a moon for one of the concubines. This isn't just about cleanliness, it's also a classification system. Get a towel mixed up and you could accidentally wrap a janissary in silk meant for the queen mother. That's not just awkward, it's actionable. Quirky fact. One sultan was known for demanding that his towels be pre-warmed under his horse's saddle blanket before use. No one knows why. Maybe he liked the earthy scent. Maybe it was a superstition. Either way, it made bath days an equestrian nightmare for his valet. Your arms ache, but the rhythm of the process is hypnotic. Soak, scrub, stump, rinse, steam. The air is thick, but not unpleasant. And the moment the fresh linen is draped over wooden racks, drying into crisp perfection, you understand why Hammam Day is revered. The laundry smells like heaven, clean, warm, herbaceous. In a corner, a small scuffle breaks out between two junior laundresses. Someone used another's eucalyptus ration. Ayla Hatun settles it with a glare. Next time, she says, we use the old punishment. You wear the unwashed sash. You suppress a laugh, but you also work faster. Historians still argue whether these bathhouse laundry cycles were primarily hygienic or deeply ceremonial. Some suggest the cleanliness obsession was a form of religious observance, tying bodily purity to moral clarity. Others believe it was simply the Ottoman version of brand maintenance, ensuring that the court looked and smelled like it floated above the common mud. After lunch, boiled eggs, olives, and bread with rose jam. You assigned to the steam pummeling crew, where freshly laundered garments are beaten with wooden paddles to soften fibers and release tension in the weave. Like massage, but violent, one worker jokes, wielding a paddle with glee. The garments thud rhythmically against the stone, the scent of rose soap wafting through the vapors. Later, you're chosen to assist in the drying garden, an open courtyard where special linens are air-dried on tension ropes, carefully aligned to avoid creases. It's here you spot one of the most luxurious items you've ever handled, the Queen Mother's bathing veil. It's nearly transparent, embroidered with thread of pearl, and it smells like violets and old secrets. You touch it only with gloved hands. Just before sundown, the final stage begins, fragrance steaming. Garments are laid over grates where sachets of herbs and drops of oil release one last kiss of scent. Each cloth absorbs a unique profile, some airy, some woodsy, some sweet as sherbet. As you fold the last towel, your shoulders scream for rest, but your senses are singing. There is satisfaction in this cycle, in the alchemy of filth into finery. You realize you've come to love the soap, the steam, even the sore wrists. It's a different kind of palace power, not gilded or ceremonial, but honest, necessary. On your way out, Ayla Hatun presses a folded handkerchief into your palm. This one was meant for a poet, she says, but I think you've earned it. You sniff it, sandalwood in time. It smells like resilience. You carry it back to your quarters, fingers still puckered from scrubbing, nose full of royal fragrance, and a strange, quiet pride curling in your chest. You're not just part of the palace anymore, you're part of its rhythm, its breath, its scent. The following day, your hands are still a little raw from hammam duty, but there's no time for pampering. This morning, you've been summoned to help prepare for something more delicate, more terrifying, if you're honest. Today, You're laundering for a royal inspection. Not just any noble's wardrobe, mind you. This time it's the Sultan's ceremonial garments. There's a specific kind of silence that falls over the laundry courtyard when those bundles arrive. No jokes, no humming, no casual elbow bumps. Just careful fingers unwrapping layers of cloth to reveal robes so finely embroidered they look like they were whispered into existence. Each item is an artwork. Turquoise kaftans with pearl studs, cream-colored cloaks edged with actual gold thread, sashes patterned in geometric knotwork that seems to shimmer depending on how you tilt your head. You try not to breathe too hard near them. You're given a soft brush, a silk-covered bolster, and a bowl of rosewater mixed with vinegar and cloudberry extract. This isn't washing, it's anointing. The garments are too precious to be soaked like common linens, so you use delicate, circular motions to lift dust and odors from the surface. Someone nearby sneezes, and 3 people jump like startled cats. A supervisor stands nearby with a parchment scroll of garment records, checking off which pieces have been cleaned, fluffed, or stitched. One robe bears a stain, barely visible, the size of a fingernail. The supervisor frowns. From the Feast of Lanterns, he mutters, "Pomegranate juice." The robe is marked for embroidery touch-up. No one dares ask who spilled it. You wake mostly in silence, but there are whispers floating around. Rumors that a foreign ambassador will be visiting the Topkapi Palace next week, and the Sultan wants to impress. Naturally, that means the Sultan's wardrobe must outshine every mosaic, every jewel, and every clever speech anyone gives. In a way, you're laundering for diplomacy. The tension is almost comical. At one point, an apprentice stumbles while carrying a stack of folded cuffs. She doesn't fall, thank goodness, but the cuffs bend ever so slightly. Everyone stares. One veteran laundryman sighs. That's 4 to 5 minutes of steaming ruined. The cuffs are returned to be reshaped. You make a mental note. Never trip. Ever. Quirky tidbit. The Sultan once had a ceremonial robe lined entirely with wild silk spun by palace-raised silkworms fed only on apricot leaves. Historians still argue whether this was because of a belief in the metaphysical purity of apricots, or because he simply hated the smell of mulberry trees. And here's a real test of your nerves. Perfuming the imperial socks. Yes, socks. No matter how powerful you are, your feet will sweat. And the Ottoman court took olfactory presentation very seriously. You dab a mixture of mint oil and crushed cloves onto a bit of linen, then wrap the socks inside for a few hours. Not a drop more. Too much oil and the fabric stains. Too little, and someone will notice. Every so often, an imperial wardrobe attendant, called an SVAPS, sweeps in to inspect the progress. These men are lean, immaculately dressed, and terrifyingly soft-spoken. You learn fast that a nod from one of them is the highest praise you're likely to get. At midday, there's a brief break. You nibble on almonds and sweetened carrots, watching a falcon circle the minarets above. You hear one washer murmur, "If that bird soils the Sultan's cloak, we're all dead." You laugh a little too loudly. No one joins in. They might not be joking. By late afternoon, the robes are laid flat on padded tables, ready to be folded and placed in cedar-lined chests. This final folding is its own art. Creases are aligned along the grain of the weave, sleeves positioned to allow air circulation, hems fluffed just enough to maintain their shape. Watching the head folder work is like witnessing origami with fabric. Every move is fluid, practiced, reverent. Just when you think it's all done, an order comes in. A small shipment of undergarments. Yes, even the Sultan's needs last-minute freshening. You're sent to assist. It's less glamorous, but still, it matters. These aren't just clothing items. They are layers of the Sultan's image, his aura, his command over perception itself. One pair of breeches has lace so fine you worry your breath might unravel it. Another has tiny stitched tulips, a symbol of the Ottoman dynasty, just inside the waistband. A private detail only visible to the wearer. And now, to you. By dusk, your muscles ache, your nerves are frayed, and your fingers smell like lavender and starch. But the garments? They are glorious. They shimmer in the candlelight like ghosts of honor, stitched with pride and polish. You feel proud. 2. Not because anyone clapped you on the back, but because you are part of something precise, exacting, and ephemeral, like sculpting fog into a crown. The last robe is placed into its chest. The supervisor closes the lid, seals it with a silk ribbon, and says, "May the threads hold." Everyone nods. You quietly mouth it too. May the threads hold. You wake the next morning expecting some relief, maybe a day of folding towels or organizing bundles. No such luck. Instead, you're told the palace has issued a samar-sayam, a full linen census. Every item in storage, every stitch of fabric in the washing cycle, and every piece issued to any room or servant must be accounted for. It's 1 part inventory, 1 part treasure hunt, and 10 parts panic. You're handed a charcoal slate and a short piece of string. For counting and measuring, the steward explains before vanishing into the chaos. Your first stop is the linen storeroom, rows upon rows of wooden shelves stacked with folded sheets, towels, bed covers, and ceremonial napkins. It smells like lemon balm and starch. There's a sense of calm here, until you realize someone's misfiled the turbans. Each rank of palace staff had their own authorized headgo, from viziers down to kitchen boys. And every turban cloth must be laundered, rolled, and labeled accordingly. But here they are, vizier wraps in the same stack as garden boys. You don't know whether to laugh or cry. You settle for resorting them in alphabetical order and muttering vague curses at whoever caused this. Outside the storeroom, a scribe is seated with a quill and parchment ledger, recording every item you call out. 5 lavender-scented guest towels, 3 saffron-colored harem shawls, 1 pair of embroidered handkerchiefs with blue fringe, and... Wait, are those initials? You squint. They are. The scribe raises an eyebrow. Personal monogramming is not typical. The handkerchiefs are quietly set aside. Possibly someone's stolen them from a visiting dignitary. You've just uncovered your first potential scandal, and it's floral. As you continue, you pass the eunuch's quarters, where linens are counted by 2 overseers and 1 surprisingly meticulous eunuch who insists that his bedclothes are always precisely arranged like pages in a sacred book. His storage cubby is a masterpiece, rolled linens nested inside one another like fabric matryoshka dolls. You wonder if he'd help organize your socks. In the kitchens, the laundry is stickier. The towels there are stained with turmeric, dates, and something alarmingly pink. Pomegranate again, someone says grimly. You spot a stack of aprons bearing bone marks shaped like fish, a side effect of oven wrangling gone wrong. The cook claims they are intentional. Like war scars, he says. You're not convinced. The census takes you through parts of the palace you rarely see. The guard barracks, the scribe's dormitory, even the concubine's music room. That one is awkward. You step inside and are immediately surrounded by silk veils and cinnamon-scented shawls, scattered across cushions like confetti after a party. A music instructor frowns at your presence but allows you to count, provided you don't touch anything with fingers less clean than your conscience. You also discover a cabinet filled with linen puppets. Yes, puppets. Apparently used by harem tutors to teach young girls about household responsibilities. Each puppet with miniature towels, dresses, and napkins. One was a tiny fez. You nearly burst out laughing. There's also an ongoing debate among palace historians. Did these puppet sets double as entertainment, or were they strictly educational? Some suggest they were occasionally borrowed by court jesters for mock performances of laundry disputes. Others insist they were sacred teaching tools. You suspect both are true. One scribe asks you to help track down missing sock pairs from the Sultan's private quarters. You're told the missing socks were dyed in crushed iris petals, making them extremely rare and faintly violet-scented. They were last seen after the Grand Vizier's birthday. So either lost in celebration, the scribe mutters, or stolen by someone with a strange foot fetish. You don't ask follow-up questions. By midday, your slate is full, your fingers stained with chalk, and your patience running thinner than boiled gauze. You stop by the courtyard fountain, where another apprentice is rinsing small cloths. He's grumbling. They gave me the gallery drapes. Do you know how long those take to dry? You sympathize. They are massive, hemmed in gold thread, and seem to repel wind. You take a moment to breathe and stare at the sky, soft and pale. as if the palace itself had squeezed out all the blue. You wonder how many clouds of steam and baskets of linen have floated through this courtyard over the years. Generations of hands, like yours, scouring and smoothing the royal laundry into submission. The final stop of the day is the palace nursery. You are not prepared. Tiny tunics, embroidered booties, bibs with pearls sewn into the hem. One toddler sleeping gown has a stitched image of a tiger chasing a watermelon. Symbolic, the nursemaid says solemnly, of dreams and digestion. You choose not to probe that metaphor. The nursemaid insists on recounting every swaddle. Some have gone missing, she explains, probably used as makeshift doll blankets. You wonder aloud if the linen puppets have anything to do with that. Her eyes narrow. You've seen the puppets. You nod. A silent understanding passes between you. At sunset, you return your slate to the head of records. He inspects it with the eye of a man checking for spelling errors in a sacred text. Then he grunts, "Acceptable," which, in palace terms, is like a standing ovation. Your legs ache. Your eyes blur. But you've counted over 800 items, found a scandalous monogram, uncovered a puppet conspiracy, and gained a strange respect for linen inventory. It's absurd. It's exhausting. It's the Ottoman Empire, one stitch at a time. The next morning begins not with laundry, but with a summons. A small boy in a crimson sash taps your shoulder as you reach for a basket of pillowcases. You're requested, he says, like it's the most ordinary thing in the world. He leads you through corridors you've never entered, past calligraphers' chambers, a room filled entirely with musical instruments, and a stairwell that smells faintly of vinegar and cedarwood, until you arrive at a quiet courtyard shaded by a fig tree. There sits an old woman, serene and slightly terrifying, with a basin of herbs at her feet and a small gray monkey perched on her shoulder. She introduces herself simply as Dio, and before you can respond, she says, "You're here about the linens." You nod. She nods. The monkey nods. The meeting begins. Dio is the palace's linen historian. Yes, that's a real position. She's responsible for tracking the origin, purpose, and symbolic meanings of every significant textile in the palace. Laundry is not just about cleanliness, she murmurs. It's about memory. You soon learn the palace doesn't just wash and reuse fabric. It archives it. A scrap of embroidered shawl from a disgraced concubine, folded and labeled. A handkerchief once waved by a visiting Venetian, pressed between cedar panels. A wine-stained napkin from a long-forgotten feast, preserved like a relic of sacred chaos. Dio opens a narrow cabinet and shows you something extraordinary. The Sultan's childhood blanket, woven with threads dyed from crushed saffron and madder root, still faintly sweet-smelling. He once bit the corner in a tantrum. She smiles. We kept the mark. You realize the palace laundry isn't just about what's clean. It's a chronicle of who was here and how they touched the world. Historians still argue, Diaz says, her eyes twinkling, whether the Ottoman court intended this level of preservation, or if it was the work of compulsive textile archivists like myself. The monkey chirps in agreement. Then she hands you a packet tied in indigo silk. Take this to the keeper of scents, she instructs. Tell her it's the 7th blend. You deliver it to a room so aromatic you nearly forget your name. Bundles of lavender, orange peel, rose petals, crushed mint, and something musky you can't identify line the walls. The keeper of scents is tall, silent, and wears a gauzy veil infused with cardamom oil. She opens the packet, sniffs, nods, and hands you a tiny sachet. For the Grand Vizier's pillow, she says. Place it under the left corner. You never thought scent would be part of your job, but here you are, an unofficial courier of dreams. The scent sachets are part of a larger system, the linen scent rotation, designed to ensure no two rooms smell quite the same. The logic is unclear. Some say it keeps moods balanced. Others believe it detains mice. A few whisper it's all part of a complicated network of favoritism. You can judge who's in royal favor based on whether their linens smell of bergamot or basil. Back in your laundry alcove, a crisis is unfolding. A foreign dignitary's valet is insisting his master's ceremonial robe has not been properly laundered. You examine the garment. It's made of wool, embroidered with tiny gold stars and a questionable depiction of a unicorn. You explain gently that it was hand-washed in rose water and dried on a frame carved from fig branches. The valet is unimpressed. It feels damp. You resist the urge to ask if it's always this dramatic or just when unicorns are involved. You take the robe back for re-drying and, while you're at it, sneak it into the airing courtyard, a sunlit space where linens are strung like musical notes across polished wooden frames. You find the old master launderer, Elias, humming to himself as he carefully irons a set of handkerchiefs using a stone heated in ash. He nods toward the robe. Foreigners always think dampness is an insult. He shrugs. In this climate, everything's damp. You ask him about his oldest memory of laundry. He pauses, presses a crease, and finally says, "When I was a boy, I dropped the Sultan's underclothes into a goose pond. They chased me for hours. Never made that mistake again." You suspect the geese remember too. From Elias, you learn a key piece of trivia. Some palace linens were designed not to be washed often. Instead, they were perfumed, smoked with resins, and lightly brushed. Why? To prevent wear, to retain ceremonial energy, or perhaps just to make life difficult for apprentices. No one's quite sure. Your next task is to oversee a bundle meant for a traveling caravan, a set of portable linens for a diplomatic envoy heading to Aden. The bundle includes 4 bed sheets, 6 towels, 2 scented sachets, 1 tiny embroidered slipper, a gift for a provincial governor, and a collapsible linen wardrobe shaped like a teardrop. It's part furniture, part fabric origami. Loading it onto the wagon, you marvel at the sheer logistics of Ottoman travel comfort. Even on the road, the empire's laundry must whisper of elegance. As evening falls, you pass a pair of harem girls practicing folding techniques using silken scarves. One folds by width, the other by diagonal. Faster this way, one insists. Cleaner this way, the other argues. You realize even here, in the shadows of the palace, laundry philosophies divide people like political factions. You sneak away with one last delivery, freshly washed towels for the royal bathhouse. There, the air is steamy and lemon-scented, and the sound of dripping water echoes like distant applause. You place the towels on a brass tray. A hand reaches out from the steam and plucks one. Soft, the voice says. Well done. You don't recognize the speaker. You don't need to. In the palace, recognition is a currency best spent sparingly. You return to your quarters with a small smile. Today, you learned laundry is a story, a scent, a game, and sometimes, just sometimes, a moment of quiet approval behind a veil of steam. You wake to a strange sound, like rustling silk mixed with muffled laughter. Outside your chamber, the courtyard is alive with fluttering colors. Lines of fabric wave like banners in the early breeze, each one trimmed with a red tassel or marked by a painted symbol. Today is inspection day, when the Sultan's advisors perform their seasonal audit of palace operations. And yes, that includes laundry. Your instructions: make everything shine, smell like heaven, and stand as still as your nerves will allow. The laundry quarters are transformed. Tables are scrubbed, irons polished to gleaming. And for the first time in weeks, no one argues over folding methods. Even Elias wears shoes. You're assigned to oversee the royal undergarments section, a surprisingly tense post. Not because anything scandalous is involved, well, not technically, but because each garment must be laid out in a precise sequence reflecting rank, age, and recent health concerns. The physician's assistant comes by to mark each piece with a chalk symbol, crescent for chills, star for rashes, a rather unfortunate squiggle for ongoing digestive distress. You try not to look too closely. Historians still argue whether this level of detailed sorting was standard in all courts, or a uniquely Ottoman obsession. Regardless, it's become your morning reality. As you arrange items under the sharp gaze of a visiting chamberlain, your mind drifts to the weirder corners of the laundry inventory, like the marriage towels embroidered with tiny chickens, believed to encourage fertility, or the ceremonial loincloth used once a year during the palace's water festival. Let's just say it involves jasmine petals and rhythmic chanting. The inspection party arrives. First come the officials, slow, serious, all mustache and folded hands. Then a cluster of record keepers, scratching notes on scrolls. Finally, the high steward, who inspects a towel the way a jeweler examines a diamond. He touches the fabric, sniffs the corner, and gives a slow nod. Relief washes over the room like a fresh rinse cycle. But the day's not done. Next, you're sent to assist with a laundry scroll update ceremony. This is when the palace's master scribe records significant changes in textile use. New patterns adopted, retired fabrics archived, mysterious stains noted for investigation. It's part report, part gossip session. Today's additions include a bath towel scorched during a lightning storm. Don't ask. Or a robe altered after its owner lost weight during a fast. A pillowcase found bearing a cryptic love poem, likely written by moonlight and regretted by dawn. The scribe's brush dances across the parchment, and you realize something strange. Laundry, here, has a paper trail centuries deep. Linen isn't just laundered, it's documented into eternity. From there, you're roped into the annual folding contest, an unofficial tradition among laundry apprentices. It's part skill show, part stress relief, and part low-key mutiny. Contestants must fold a full towel set, blindfolded, with their elbows tucked to their sides. You do surprisingly well, until you mix up a bath sheet with a table runner and accidentally create something that resembles a turban with legs. Laughter erupts. You bow dramatically. A judge gives you a consolation fig. But your highlight of the day comes later, as you're walking past the tapestry repair chamber. A voice calls you in. It's Master Harun, the tapestry mender. He gestures to a folded piece of ivory fabric on a workbench. This, he says, is believed to be part of the Prophet's banner. You blink. It was sent for cleaning once. Only once. Then sealed away. You stare at it, yellowed but soft, smelling faintly of myrrh and thyme. It's hemmed in delicate gold thread, so fine it could pass through the eye of a sparrow. We don't clean things like this anymore, Harun says. We preserve the dust. You understand. Some laundry carries more than stains. It carries story. Back in your laundry quarters, there's a delivery waiting. A foreign nobleman has sent you a gift, a wooden comb carved into the shape of a phoenix. Attached is a note. For your care of my ceremonial sash. It smelled better than my marriage bed. Charming. You're told to log the gift in the Registry of Gratitude, a thick leather-bound ledger kept under lock and key. It contains entries dating back 200 years. Some items recorded. A ruby-studded hairpin from a grateful duchess. A bottle of plum wine sent by mistake. It was consumed anyway. A single goose feather, left anonymously, with a message, "You saved me." Reading through the entries, you're struck by the emotional weight behind so many of them. Laundry may be silent work, but its impact isn't. As night falls, a soft knock draws your attention. It's the Grand Steward's assistant, holding a linen wrap. "A private favor," he whispers. "Please don't write this one down." You nod. You take the cloth, plain, finely woven, with a tear along one edge, and wash it gently under moonlight. As you hang it to dry, you hear distant music from the gardens, something flute-like and nostalgic. And just for a moment, you feel the stillness that comes from doing something right, even if no one will ever see it. You head to bed thinking, in a palace of silk and gold, you handle the threads that hold it all together. The next morning begins with thunder. No, not in the sky, but in the hallway. Someone's running. Fast. That's never a good sign in a palace. Moments later, a breathless page appears at your door, waving a sealed scroll like it's on fire. "Urgent laundry summons," he says between gulps of air. "Royal emergency." You don't even ask. You just grab your linen apron and follow. The emergency? A stained prayer rug. Not just any rug. This one belonged to the Sultan's grandfather and is only brought out during rare state visits. Today, of course, is one of those days. And the rug? It bears an unfortunately shaped splash of pomegranate syrup. Right in the center, right where the visiting dignitary will kneel. You arrive at the preservation chamber to find 3 senior launderers already hovering over the rug-like surgeons, whispering nervously. One mutters, "May the Prophet forgive fruit." You are asked to mix a gentle solution of rose water and powdered chalk, an ancient cleaning formula said to lift stains without harming delicate threads. It's applied with a tiny camel hair brush. Stroke by stroke. Breath held. Somehow it works. The red blotch lightens to pink, then vanishes into the rug's floral motif. Disaster averted. The head steward hands you a gold-threaded token of appreciation, a small sunburst badge that, you're told, grants you permission to use the royal garden bathhouse for a full day. Privately, this might be your proudest moment yet, but the day has more in store. In the afternoon, you're assigned to work on the imperial boat cloaks, thick velvet garments lined with ermine, worn only during ceremonial rides along the Bosphorus. Each cloak is weighted, embroidered, and possessed of the unnerving ability to trap every particle of palace dust. Cleaning them requires an odd mix of beating, steaming, and soft singing. No one knows why the singing helps, but it's tradition. As you help air out the capes, a gust from the sea sweeps in through the arched windows, carrying the scent of salt, spices, and fish. The cloaks billow like sails. For a second, the laundry room feels like the deck of a galleon, and you, armed with a brush and a lemon-scented cloth, feel like a noble pirate. Later, you find yourself summoned again, but this time, not for cleaning. You're invited to assist with the Palace Clothing Archive Tour, an event held once a season for the palace's youngest pages and apprentice scribes. It's designed to teach respect for the garments they'll one day wear or serve. The children arrive wide-eyed, some still smelling of breakfast syrup. You guide them through the corridors of silk and velvet, caftans worn during coronations, turbans once tossed in a moment of royal fury, gloves made of fishskin leather, more durable than it sounds. The kids are most impressed by a sash rumored to contain a secret pocket where the Sultan once hid love poems. One boy asks if any of the garments are haunted. You pause, consider, then tell the tale of the weeping vest, a linen undergarment said to absorb its wearer's regrets, growing damp without cause. Historians still argue whether the story was invented by laundry workers to discourage careless stains. But you like it anyway. You close the tour by showing the button wall, a lesser-known marvel, hundreds of buttons from discarded or retired uniforms, organized by century and material. Bone, brass, glass, horn. There's even a tiny emerald one that likely came from a robe no longer on record. After the children leave, giggling and buzzing with stories, you linger in the quiet archive. The garments seem to exhale around you, holding centuries of sweat, ceremony, and silent witness. Then comes the rainstorm. A summer squall sweeps through the palace grounds like a messenger in a fury. Wind howls, thunder groans, and outside on the garden lines, dozens of carefully laundered cloths, linens, towels, aprons, are still drying. You and 5 others sprint into the downpour, slipping on stone tiles, grabbing fistfuls of wet fabric, yelling instructions that are mostly drowned out by the sky's tantrum. The laundry barrels tip over. One towel sails off like a terrified ghost. You manage to rescue a full basket, soaked but salvageable. Back inside, everyone looks like shipwreck survivors. But there's laughter, real, breathless, joy-soaked laughter. Someone starts singing a folk tune about runaway sheets. You join in. That night, you're given a rare permission slip, a silk-stitched card granting you the right to sit in on the Harem Tailors Evening Symposium. Normally off-limits to non-members, it's a casual but intellectually rich gathering where master seamstresses and launderers exchange knowledge, gossip, and sometimes snacks. Topics tonight include how to rehem while pretending not to eavesdrop, which dye smells the worst when rehydrated, the unanimous winner, fermented mulberry. A debate on whether it's rude to starch socks for someone who never asked. You don't say much, you're still the new one, but you learn a lot. About seams, about patience, about people. By the end of the night, someone hands you a gift, a pair of tiny gold thread scissors, not for cutting, but for wearing, tucked into your sash. A symbol of inclusion. And yes, they sparkle when the candlelight hits them. As you walk back through the quiet halls, the palace feels different. Less vast, more lived in. You pass a sleeping guard and tuck a clean handkerchief beside his elbow. Just because. And when you finally return to your quarters, towel-wrapped, thunder-tired, and deeply content, you know one thing for sure. You belong here now. You wake the next morning to a peculiar silence. No hallway chatter, no clatter of basins, no barked orders echoing down the stone corridors. Just the soft rustle of a pigeon settling on your windowsill, and the whisper of laundry hanging still in the early sun. But peace, in a palace, is always suspicious. You pull on your cotton vest and wrap your sash tightly, following instinct more than instruction. Sure enough, as you approach the central courtyard, you find a large cluster of workers gathered near the Sultan's garden pavilion. Something has happened. A steward steps forward, holding what appears to be a ceremonial towel, embroidered, gold-tasseled, and very, very stained. Bird incident, he mutters, handing it over. Unfortunate timing. The visiting dignitary from Tunis was just about to wipe his hands after tea. You blink. What kind of bed? A page nearby shrugs. Dove? Maybe. Hawk? Opinions vary. Whatever it was, it struck like a comet. The towel is now a diplomatic liability, and it's up to you and your team to not just clean it, but restore its honor. You get to work in the royal dye cellar, a cool, sunless chamber where colors sleep in clay pots and bundles of dried herbs dangle like ancient chandeliers. You choose a gentle treatment of warm milk soap, strained rose water, and powdered alum. A painstaking rinse, followed by blotting with woven flax sheets. 3 hours later, the towel is not just clean, it looks reborn. The embroidery glimmers again. The scent is faintly floral. You return it to the steward, who nods, murmurs a vow to war, and disappears. Your next task is simpler. Help prepare fresh bed linens for the Sultan's traveling tent. Tomorrow, the royal procession will move upriver, and he prefers familiar softness even on campaign. It's your job to inspect every stitch, ensure the cotton's breathability, and lightly scent the sheets with crushed lavender wrapped in cheesecloth. As you fold the final corner, you catch a glimpse of your own reflection in the polished brass urn beside the basin. You look different. Still tired, sure, but focused, steady, a professional. One of the senior washers passes behind you and casually drops a bar of green soap into your apron pocket. No words, just a nod. Around here, that's basically a hug. That evening, as the sun turns the domes of the palace copper and the sea beyond glows like poured gold, you're summoned for your final assignment of the week, preparing the imperial bathrobes for the Sultan's midnight soak. These robes are woven of rare Bursa silk, light as air, dyed the color of spring apricots. They wrinkle at a whisper, stain if you breathe on them wrong, and must be handled only with bare hands freshly scrubbed with lemon and ash. You carry them carefully through the tiled corridors to the bathhouse, where lanterns swing gently and steam curls like smoke from invisible fires. The robes are placed on a cedarwood bench, warmed slightly with hot stones beneath, ready for His Majesty. And then, you're free. At last, you return to the laundry chambers to tidy your tools, oil your brushes, and wind the thread on your sleeve ring. No one's watching, but you do it all anyway, out of pride, out of rhythm. As you walk back to your quarters, passing the scent of warm bread from the kitchen wing and a cat curled on a velvet cushion that definitely doesn't belong to it, you pause under a fig tree. The stars are out. The wind smells like jasmine and sea brine. And for just a moment, you think of everything you've touched this week. Sheets, robes, cloaks, gloves, towels, tunics, dignity, diplomacy, and the occasional pigeon mishap. Historians still argue whether the palace launderers were true artisans or simply overtrained servants. Some claim they were little more than glorified moppers. Others say they kept the empire stitched together, thread by patient thread. You know the truth. You kept things soft, clean, ready, and now, finally, it's time to rest. The palace begins to quiet, stone by stone, window by window. Somewhere a lute is plucked softly. Somewhere else, a sandal is kicked off with a sigh. The empire, however vast, takes a breath. And so do you. You sit by your basin, dipping one last cloth into lavender water, wringing it out with the ease of repetition. The warmth of the day slips from your shoulders. Your hands, roughened and wise now, trace the worn grain of the windowsill. The city outside is folding itself to sleep. Candles snuffed, conversations trailing into dreams. You hear the clip of a guard's boots, the soft hoot of a distant owl, the gentle lapping of the Bosphorus just beyond the palace edge. You think of the day's odd tasks, the royal towel, the haunted vest, the runaway sheet in the rain. You smile. It was absurd, and beautiful, and yours. Somewhere, a bell chimes once. Then silence again. The stars twinkle above the domes, indifferent and eternal. But down here, in the folds of linen and the scent of orange blossom soap, life hums softly. And your place in it, modest, meticulous, meaningful, feels utterly complete. You close your eyes. You've done enough for today. Sleep, sweet laundry keeper. The palace will be here in the morning. End of script. Sweet dreams.